Welcome to Worship Leader Wednesday. Today we're talking about auditions, how we do auditions in our church, and what do you do when somebody isn't good enough to make the cut. Hey, I wanted to interrupt really quick to let you know that Fuller and I decided to break this video into two parts. So in this video, part 2, we're talking about what to do after somebody auditions for your worship team. If they make it, how to assimilate them. If they don't pass that audition, what the next steps are. So if you want to see the first video, which was last week's Worship Leader Wednesday, you can see that on the YouTube channel where we talked about the different ways to audition people. So part 2 of this video, what to do next. So you've got two roads really. One, they make it.
Two roads diverged.
How do we onboard them? 2,
yes, this way. No, this way.
2, they don't make it.
Yeah.
And how do you communicate that in a way that doesn't just completely crush somebody? And how also do you provide them resources in case they want to, try to develop and audition again? Yeah. So let's hit the first one first. They're good enough.
Yeah, what if they're good enough?
How
And
do we
we make mistakes sometimes. We find somebody that's good enough, and then we just throw them on, and we full speed and schedule them every week.
Yeah.
And you got to onboard people, right? I think because a person has the talent to be on the team, that doesn't mean they have the chemistry and the competence and all of the other things and culture, really. Yeah. And so create a process for people to get in. Obviously if they've got the music down, they still need to learn about how you operate and your team. So be very slow to bring them in. Yeah. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll have if a vocalist auditions and makes it, well, the first thing we'll do is we'll have them shadow another one of our vocalists. Mm-hmm. They'll just come to a rehearsal. They'll hang out with that vocalist. They'll watch them. They'll learn how the in-ears work. They'll learn how the mics work, how everything functions, where everything is, what our schedule is. Yeah. Because for some people, getting up at 5 a.m. is just blows their mind, and it takes them a while to adjust. And so you start getting them into that process, and then the second thing we do is have them sing at a rehearsal. So they don't have the pressure of Sunday, but they're kind of getting in the game, and then eventually they're scheduled for a Sunday. But you don't want to just throw people in right away, because A, it might be overwhelming, but B, it might also, they must not know enough or be ready enough to kind of assimilate in. Now, obviously, you have the exception where someone just moved to your city from another city and they were playing at a church already that's where you're at doing the same kind of music. They've used all the stuff you use. And then that's a special exception where you just make sure they're, everything's cool spiritually and stuff, and then you just plug them in and they're ready to rock. Yeah. That's rare. That doesn't happen very often.
Okay, so now let's talk about when somebody doesn't make the cut. Mm-hmm. So a couple things before we even get into this, Every church is going to have a different sort of standard. Like Life Church, if you're not familiar with Life Church, they're a massive multi-site church out of Oklahoma City. They're going to have a different standard of what makes the cut than the average church size in America is 80-ish people.
78 people.
Right? So a smaller church like that doesn't have quite the pool of musicians to pick from, or does, different style, whatever. Every church is going to have a different standard. One's not better than the other, just different. And the other thing is, if somebody doesn't make the cut and as the worship leader or the church leadership that they're not where they need to be yet to be on your team, say no. Don't say yes because you don't want to have that conversation or think, we'll just hide them in a mix and turn them down if they're a vocalist or something like that. But say no, and this is how you can do it in a loving way.
I struggled so many years thinking that if someone was auditioning for the team, I felt obligated for them to make it. I felt like it was my job to make sure that they made it. Yeah. And that was not the right way to look at it. And I think once I started realizing my job is not to make sure they make it. My job is to coach them, encourage them, and help them find the way that they can effectively serve the church.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be on the worship team.
No, just because someone's not ready to play guitar on Sunday doesn't make them a bad person. It doesn't make me a bad person. Right. It doesn't mean that our standard's too high. It just means that simply they're not ready to step into that role. Yeah. And there's other roles that they can step into that are just as good and just as effective in serving. I mean, the church is a body, just every part functioning differently. And so our role is to help them. Now, if I find someone who feels called and is passionate, but then they don't have the talent, then I kind of feel a little more obligated to help them create a path, right? To help them find the resources so that they can grow and learn and then eventually be ready. Yeah. But you can't lower your standard just because you feel bad for somebody. Because for one, the person doesn't want that. I don't want to play on your team and have you tell the sound guy, don't ever turn him up because he's not quite good enough. Yeah. Now there are processes that you can do. Maybe you found someone that's almost ready. Yeah. What do you do with someone that's almost ready? Yeah. Well, then you figure out ways to almost get them involved. We might have a acoustic guitar player that's really close, but not quite ready. And I will be totally honest with them and I will say, you're not ready yet. You're super close. I think in 6 months you will be ready. Yeah. But let's do this. Why don't you come on the team and do worship with us on Sunday? We're not going to plug your guitar in. We're not going to turn you up because you're not ready yet. But I believe that in that experience, because you bring great energy and you have a heart to worship, we're going to have you on stage. You're going to have the full experience. You're going to be learning these songs. I might even have you in my ear, or whatever. And then eventually when you're ready, we're going to unleash you. Yeah. And that will also develop confidence in them as well. So it's not always black and white, like yes, no. Yeah. Sometimes it's like you're close. Yeah. But when it's no, you just gotta be honest with people and love them enough and care about them enough to say no. And if someone is so passionate and so dead sure that they're supposed to be doing it, then you just give them opportunities to grow. Yeah. And then say, hey, re-audition in 6 months. Yep. But here are the things that you need to learn. Yeah. This is what I love about the video submission process is I've got a video of you auditioning. Now I can come back to you and say, hey, if you go back and listen to the course at 2 minutes and 13 seconds, you'll see you're flat on these 5 notes. Yeah. You got to work on your pitch. And then you give them, they actually create a tool as opposed to telling them that and them not having any sort of video to accompany with it. It's almost like proof.
You can achieve that with the other audition styles too, because when I would do in-person auditions, I always filmed them.
That's a great tip. That's another tip right there. Film the auditions.
And I always tried to make sure I had another either staff person or person from the worship team there.
Yes.
So it's not just me and them. Yeah. It's not like my word versus their word.
That's another important tip is sometimes as a worship leader, and if you're at a smaller church, you're the only person they interact with. That's not necessarily a good thing because they're looking at you as their worship pastor, and if you tell them no, then that kind of changes that could change their perspective on you. Yeah. And so what a lot of times what we'll do is we'll say, if I have someone audition, I'll say, me and Brian are going to watch your video and we'll get back to you. Yeah. Or me and the creative team are going to watch your video and then I'll go back with them. Here's what the creative team thought. Yeah. And sometimes when we do the in-person auditions and you have somebody with you, I'll say, here's what I thought. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. What did you think, Brian? And then Brian says, yeah, I agree. And then I also noticed that on the bridge you did this and this and this. And so they're getting multiple pieces of feedback from multiple people. Yeah. So then it's not like Brian just doesn't like me. It's more of a professional environment.
Yeah. And if somebody doesn't make the cut after you audition them, find another way for them to serve in the church. We believe that God calls everybody to serve the church. That's part of actually membership for us. Yes. Is that you serve somewhere in our church. So find somewhere and if they want to audition, they're interested in worship. So there's probably a lot of places where somebody could serve and volunteer in your church that has to do with the worship team, whether it's in production or helping with stage or anything. What are some of the positions that we give people who don't make the cut?
Yeah, so a vocalist who needs to improve their pitch would be a shoe-in to run CG lyrics. Yeah. Because they're vocalists. Yeah, and they're singers and they know the phrasing and that's a perfect position and they're still part of the worship team. Yeah. So that's a great position. And then as they're developing their vocals, they not only are then able to transition onto the team, they already know everybody. They're already in community with everybody. Yeah. So it's a really smooth transition. So there's that. There's backstage. If you got a big kind of backstage area, we have sometimes our vocalists help backstage, just making sure batteries and packs are in the right place, making sure the props are coming out at the right time. So there's lots of camera's a great place. Lighting, if they can learn lighting, maybe they're a drummer and they have just really good rhythm and stuff, and the lighting cues come natural to them. So there's tons of areas that they can serve in.
A lot of churches need sound people, just straight up.
Yes.
They don't have enough sound people, or the people that they have aren't musical. Yeah. And so a person who wants to play in the band hopefully has an ear for music And if they're not quite ready for the band, they might be a great person to train to run sound for you.
That's good. Drummers, maybe your drummer is not quite there yet, but he's pretty decent. Get a percussion kit.
Yeah.
Have him play percussion with you, you know? Some congas and some shakers. Don't give him a tambourine, though. Unless they can kill it. Yeah.
They need a little bit of rhythm for that.
That's a tip right there.
Fuller and I are going to demonstrate why you don't want to let just anyone on your team. Fuller, I tuned this guitar myself, and I'm going to play a D. You ready?
Yes, and I've been playing percussion for many years.
It's Wednesday and I'm a worship leader. It's Wednesday, I'm a worship leader. It's Wednesday and I'm a worship leader. I love the backward strum.
What did you think? Try to turn that down in the mix.